Good afternoon, everyone. I am Fahim Chaudhary, and welcome to my presentation on Enhancing Software Security, a survey of API misuse and cryptographic vulnerability detection. In the rapidly evolving landscape of software development, security remains an ever-pressing concern. As the complexity of software systems escalates, so does the intricacy of the vulnerabilities and the means by which they can be exploited. This survey paper presents a comprehensive analysis of contemporary methods in detecting security vulnerabilities, specifically focusing on API and cryptographic misuse within software and IoT devices as introduced in the research papers. These papers accumulate the latest advancement and practices in vulnerability detection, large-scale study of the lifespan of code vulnerabilities, introducing effective and high-precision tools like CryptoRex and CryptoGuard plays an important role in cryptographic misuse landscape. The collective insights gained from all the research papers, this survey aimed to inform future research directions, improving security practices, and fostering the development of more resilient software systems. These are the papers I selected for this survey. API misuse detection driven by fine-grained API constraint knowledge graph, paper 11. How long do vulnerabilities live in code? A large-scale empirical measurement study on FOSS vulnerability lifetimes, paper 21. Detecting API misuse based on pattern mining via API usage graph with parameters, paper 23. CryptoRex, large-scale analysis of cryptographic misuse in IoT devices, paper 27. And lastly, CryptoGuard, high-precision detection of cryptographic vulnerabilities in massive-sized Java projects, which is paper 28. In the next slides, we'll go into more detail about the papers in the next sections. Now, I will take a deeper dive into the paper starting with paper 1. The motivation of this study is to address the prevalent issue of API misuse in software development, which can lead to software bugs, system crashes, and security vulnerabilities. Existing approaches, largely pattern based, often result in high false positive rates due to their reliance on frequently observed uses of patterns that don't always align with the actual API constraints. Let's look at the examples here. API patterns may cover only some API usage caveats depending on API usage frequencies. In figure 1a, here is a code example of Java Swing API which satisfies the call order constraint. The add function method changes layout related information. The component hierarchy must be validated therefore in order to reflect the changes. If there are enough code snippets like the one in figure 1a in a code base, such as add function to validate function can be mined as an API pattern which helps to detect calling the add function without the validate function as a misuse. Figure 2a shows a code example of Java collection APIs. Check that has next function returns is true, then get the next element in the iteration and finally remove this element. Some patterns can be mined from such frequent use of collection APIs such as has next function to next function to remove function, or even has next function to remove function. API patterns fundamentally assume frequencies reflect the rationality of API usage, but this rationality may not correspond to the best practices of API handling caveats. By analyzing the description of return value conditions, parameter constraints, exception clauses, and API functionalities, the authors can model and reason about the complex constraint relations between APIs in the knowledge graphs as shown in figure 3b and figure 4b. The approach taken in the paper outlines a method for building a knowledge graph that maps out the components and rules of software APIs, using relationship to represent their usage and restrictions. It starts by preparing API documentation followed by a parser that constructs a declaration graph from these documents. This graph is then enriched with constraints like call order and checking conditions informed by details in the API documentation. At its heart, it is a detector that checks actual API use against this graph to identify incorrect uses, providing detailed feedback for fixes. Thanks to NLP techniques that understand complex descriptions, the outcome is an extensive knowledge graph integrated into the IntelliJ IDE as a plugin, enhancing Java code development by catching subtle API uses errors through direct insights from API documentation. The evaluation of the proposed API constraint knowledge graph showed it to be highly accurate and determined by two developers who independently annotated the accuracy of the extracted API constraint relations, with statistical methods ensuring an error margin within 0.05 at 95% confidence level. The annotator's agreement was substantial to almost perfect, with the graph's accuracy over 85% and specific relation types like call order and condition checking showing even higher accuracy. In terms of effectiveness, the authors used the MU benchmark focusing on Java SDK API misuse within 54 Java projects. Their detector identified 113 API misuses, of which 68 were confirmed true positives, resulting in a recall of 28.45%. This represents a significant improvement over existing pattern-based API misuse detectors. The approach not only demonstrated high precision and recall rates, but was also shown to be useful in a pilot user study with 12 junior developers. The study indicated that the knowledge-driven API misuse detection helped developers find and fix bugs more quickly and accurately. However, the authors encountered challenges in linking API elements within the knowledge graph accurately, with some exception not being transformed into call order or condition checking relations due to difficulties in linking clauses to API elements. Despite these challenges, the established links were very accurate. The authors believed that the extraction of call order and condition checking relations could be improved by employing more robust API linking methods. In this paper, the author's motivation was the limited progress or understanding how long vulnerabilities remain in code repositories of non-static projects. Previously, small-scale studies relied on manually created data and provided limited insights, which led to discussions that motivated the authors to investigate further. The authors of the paper contributed by creating one of the largest and most complete datasets to date to the best of their knowledge, which includes mapping between common vulnerabilities and exposures and their vulnerability computing commits, as well as mappings between CVEs and their fixing commits. They considered this dataset to be a valuable contribution in itself and plan to make it publicly available for use of other researchers. The image is a graph depicting the typical life cycle of a software vulnerability. This life cycle is divided into four phases. Phase 1, the vulnerability is introduced into the system. Phase 2, the vulnerability is discovered at time TF. Phase 3, the vulnerability is publicly disclosed at the time, after which a fix is developed and made available at time uh, fix. And phase 4, the period after the fix is available until all hosts are patched at the time TP. The continuous line indicates the time window during which vulnerability could potentially be exploited by malicious actors, starting from when it's introduced until all hosts are patched. The authors present an automated method to estimate the average lifetime of vulnerabilities in a large sample, which is a departure from previous methods that manually pinpointed the exact introduction point of vulnerabilities. They critique the lower bound approach from prior research, which underestimated the vulnerability lifetimes by over 346 days on average. To improve upon this, they introduced heuristic approach that estimates lifetimes based on the dates of vulnerability fixing commits and the history in the version control system, thus providing an average estimate rather than exact date of introduction. The new approach was validated against a dataset with over 1,000 mappings between CVEs and their corresponding VCCs, confirming the method's reliability. The authors then applied this heuristic on a large scale, assessing nearly 6,000 CVEs across 11 popular free and open source software projects. This large scale measurement was instrumental in understanding the typical duration of vulnerabilities and identifying any trends in how long they persist in code bases. The study's results provide insights into the lifetimes of vulnerabilities in free and open source softwares. The average vulnerability lifetime was around 4 years, but this varied across projects, 2 years in Chromium and 7 years in SSL projects. Vulnerability lifetimes fit an exponential distribution, meaning the likelihood of a fix decrease over time. Different types of vulnerabilities showed no significant difference in its lifetime, suggesting a uniform duration within code bases. Automated vulnerability detection tools like fuzzing aid in manual auditing and discovering new vulnerabilities, but their overall impact on software security needs further study. Vulnerable code was generally older than non-vulnerable code, implying that code maturity may correlate with the presence of vulnerabilities. The study produced a comprehensive dataset of CVEs and their fixing commits, which will be valuable for future research. The challenges faced during this study included ensuring data correctness, as the research depended on accurate bug reporting by developers and the National Vulnerability Database, the complexity of automating the data collection, sometimes necessitating the use of third-party datasets, the complexity of comparing vulnerabilities due to the nuanced nature of common weakness enumerations, which required custom mapping for standardization, and lastly, the difficulty in establishing meaningful security metrics applicable across various projects, leading to the proposal of new metrics. Also, accounting for random events and external factors that influence vulnerability lifetimes, which necessitate the authors the assumption of independence to simplify their analysis. The paper addresses the issues of API misuse in software development, a common source of crashes, security issues, and functional errors. Existing tools for detecting these misuses are not very precise and often report false positives. To tackle this, the authors introduced APDetect, a tool that uses API usage graph with parameters, AUGPs, to create detailed representations of how APIs are used. This approach starts with constructing an API location tree that tracks the sequence in which APIs and client functions are called. This tree then aids in creating AUGPs by following the data flows associated with complex API parameters. The authors apply the AFP growth algorithm to these AUGPs to uncover binary relationships and formulate rules on how APIs should be used. The tool developed APDetect uses these rules to spot when an API is misused either through absence, co-occurrence detection, or incorrect sequence order detection. It also prioritizes the reported issues based on factors like relevance and the rules condition. On MU-bench dataset, APDetect outperforms other leading detectors in both precision and F1 score. The study shows that APDetect outperforms other detectors with the highest precision rate of 56% and which is 31% higher than the next best. APDetect identified 42 correct violations for more than its closest competitors and reported the least number of violations, indicating a reduction in false positives. Challenges included dealing with inner procedural disruptions causing redundant false positives and insufficient control flow analysis creating some false positives. These are seen as areas for future improvement. The lower precision rates in other detectors were attributed to uncommon usage patterns, alternative calls, and inadequate program analysis, issues that APDetect addressed with better co-occurrence and other order detection methods. The study motivation came from exploring the importance of cryptographic functions for data security and how they are often poorly used by developers, particularly in the Internet of IoT field, where performance may take precedence over security. The authors developed CryptoRex, a tool to pinpoint cryptographic missteps in IoT devices efficiently. Their research reveals a concerning trend of substandard cryptographic practices in IoT development, underlining the need for greater awareness and improvement in the use of cryptographic functions to ensure better security. The CryptoRex framework identifies cryptographic misuse in IoT devices through a multi-step process. It begins with the automated collection of firmware from vendor websites, followed by extraction of executables using binwalk. These files are then translated into VexIR for platform agnostic analysis. The authors construct inter-procedural control flow graphs to track data flows through function calls and cross-file call graphs to monitor crypto functions across executables. Taint analysis is used to check if function augments comply with security rules. The rules are presented here from rule 1 to 6. And enhancement include more accurate conversion process, improved ICFGs for complex analysis, and updates to the crypto API list during analysis. The study found 24.2% of IoT devices firmware from 8 vendors contained cryptographic misuse, with the most common being improper encryption modes. Nearly a quarter of the firmware had at least one issue, with misuse of constant in encryption parameters being notably prevalent. CryptoRex's accuracy was confirmed through manual checks with 96.7% true positives and no false negatives in a subset analysis. It analyzed firmware swiftly, averaging 1120 seconds per image through IR lifting was time intensive. Impressively, no misuse of Rule 6 were found, indicating secure random number generating practices in the examined IoT devices. These are the challenges faced building CryptoRex. Dynamic challenges, static analysis challenges were there, IR-based analysis challenges, architecture challenges, and also lack of established IoT firmware present some challenges to build the CryptoRex. For time constraints, I will quickly go over the last paper. The authors aim to fortify Java applications by detecting cryptographic vulnerabilities in this paper, recognizing the common misuse of SSL and TLS APIs and insecure cipher configurations. They propose CryptoGuard, a high-precision tool that identifies vulnerabilities through static analysis using advanced program slicing techniques. CryptoGuard targets a variety of cryptographic flaws, including predictable keys, insecure random number generators, static salts in encryption, and weak hashing algorithms. It categorizes risks based on potential attacker gains and exploit difficulty into high, medium, and low severities. The results were promising, with significant reduction in false positives, 76% for Apache projects and 80% for Android apps, and a high true positive rate of 98.61 for Apache projects. The tool proved more effective than others like Chris SL and spot bugs in benchmark comparison. Challenges were faced including the tool's scalability and the refinement of algorithms to accurately identify true vulnerabilities amidst a vast array of cryptographic APIs. Despite these challenges, CryptoGuard managed to maintain high precision and efficiency in large-scale projects, establishing itself as a valuable asset for enhancing Java software security. This survey underscores a critical aspect of modern software development, the need for advanced methods and tools to detect and manage API misuse and cryptographic vulnerabilities. I tried my best to highlight significant strides made with tools like API Constraint Knowledge Graph, API Detect, CryptoRex, CryptoGuard, which have enhanced the precision and reduced false positives in detecting vulnerabilities in software and IoT devices. Despite this advancement, the challenge of promptly identifying and addressing vulnerabilities remains. The pervasive cryptographic issues in IoT devices particularly emphasize the urgency for improved security practices. The evolution of threats necessitates the parallel evolution of security measures, pointing to a future where sophisticated AI-enhanced tools could play a pivotal role in safeguarding software integrity against ever-changing and complex vulnerabilities. The continual innovation in this field is not just beneficial but essential to keep up with the pace of technological advancement and the ingenuity of cyber threats. Thank you for listening.